Byron Donalds represents Florida's 19th district in the U.S. Congress and recently had an opportunity to do something none of us have done. That's view the classified documents surrounding the criminal pay-to-play scheme that put $5 million from Burisma in the Biden's family pockets. Please welcome to our show for the first time in Nashville, Congressman Byron Donalds. I'd say, Congressman, there's been quite a lot going on this week, and you saw something we didn't see, and that's that Form 1023. What can you tell us from having been on the Oversight Committee, which has now become maybe the most important committee in Congress? What is it that you saw that makes you think there's something here?
Well, the first thing that I saw, and this is more process than anything else, the FBI had us review an unclassified document in a classified secure facility in the Capitol. So let this sink in. The only way members of the Oversight Committee could see this document is that we had to go into the SCIF to read a document that the FBI says is not classified. The top of the document says unclassified report. That's number one. Number two, it's very clear that the confidential human source has direct interactions with several people in the orbit of the Burisma executive, contact, whoever, and that has very granular details. The first detail is that the Burisma exec or Burisma person, they refer to Hunter Biden as an idiot several times. They say he's stupid, but we have to have him in because he's the conduit to Joe Biden. They say in the document that that there was a reference of, I think the confidential human source goes, well, maybe you should stay away from the Bidens. Maybe you should go somewhere else. Okay, go somewhere else. Go do it another different way. And then Burisma exec's like, no, this is the best way we think to do it. The money essentially has already gone. And that it's moving through several accounts that would take investigators 10 years to find out how it got to Joe Biden. At the end of the day, it's a pay-for-play scheme because they needed Joe Biden in his position as then vice president to put pressure on the Ukrainian government to fire the prosecutor that was looking into Burisma.
And yet this week, Donald Trump is being indicted because he had some papers at Mar-a-Lago. Joe Biden had papers next to his Corvette in his garage, and even Mike Pence, a good guy, had some papers at his house. Donald Trump's indicted for that. What are we supposed to take from that?
Hunter Biden's now been under investigation for 5-6 years. So this investigation is taking forever to come to a conclusion. Meanwhile, with these documents, they started doing this investigation 7 months ago. They've been moving at warp speed in this investigation, but when it comes to the Biden family, it's a slow creep and a slow grind over years. That's the problem, I think, that the American people are really seeing here, is that they're saying with Hunter Biden and the laptop, which they had, by the way, the FBI had this information about this from their confidential informant with Burisma. They've had this information now for 7 years.
7 years.
For people who have not read the Durham report, the Durham report is crystal clear that there are elements of the FBI and the Department of Justice who pick and choose when they want to investigate, how aggressive they choose to investigate. And it is beyond a shadow of a doubt that with respect to Donald Trump, they are choosing to be overly aggressive in their investigation, in so much as in front of the grand jury, having attorneys testify to divulge attorney-client privilege between them and Donald Trump.
I'm just stunned that there's not an outrage. Nobody in the media is upset about this. I mean, the only people I see really worked up are guys like you and James Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, and the people who have been elected by the people to look over this stuff.
Well, look, the media is in the tank. Let's be perfectly clear. They want the radical Democrat agenda to pass. I was in D.C. My oldest son was with my youngest son. They went to the urgent care because he had a fever. My son had to call me in order for me to authorize the doctor that she could go through the examination of my child. But you got districts who say, oh no, it's totally fine to change a child's gender without telling the parents. That's how radical this agenda is. The media is in for the agenda. They want the agenda. So anything that would slow it down or stop their preferred candidates from winning, they're either gonna ignore it, which is what they do most of the time with Joe Biden. They call it disinformation, which is what happened during the 2020 elections, or they look for any other issue to distract and to move the eyes of the American people towards.
That is very frightening. You know, I've been stunned that the agencies of the federal government have stiff-armed you guys in the Oversight Committee as if they can tell you to go pound sand. I mean, you have a constitutional duty and obligation to oversee the things that are going on in the government. And when they tell you that, we're not interested in complying, what do you do with that kind of stuff?
Well, me personally, my attitude is defund them.
Good for
You see, the people are the ones who fund these agencies, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to comply with requests of information, and this is serious. If you're not going to comply with requests for information from the elected representatives of the people, then that means you don't need my money.
Good for
I
you.
keep this stuff real simple,
I
man.
like
I'm a city kid. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. At the end of the day, if I'm giving you money and you're not going to answer my questions, then that means you don't need my money.
And I wish some of these guys were mowing yards instead of running federal agencies, because I think we'd be better off if they were. It's crazy. We just went through this terrible debt ceiling stuff, and I understand that we didn't want to let it default. Mm-hmm. You were one of the people that said you just couldn't vote for that.
Right.
Walk us through what were your reasons in saying, I'm not voting for the debt ceiling bill.
Well, for me, it's very simple. The debt ceiling bill will allow for the United States to be another $4 trillion in debt on top of the $32 trillion we already have. And in my view, the cuts associated with this $4 trillion raise, roughly $12 million in cuts in the first year, is just not enough.
Yeah.
I used to work in banking, okay? I'm not concerned if you borrow money, but there has to be a consistent way that you can demonstrate you can, one, pay me back, and two, your operations are stabilized, whether that's in a business or in a family.
Yeah.
In the federal government, the spending is out of control, and Washington has no muscle memory to say, man, you know what? We are spending a lot of money. Maybe we should trim this down. So in my view, if you can't be disciplined in your normal operating business, then I'm not going to support you going out to the markets and borrowing more money. And that's my position.
How can we get you cloned? How can we get a few more people to think like you're thinking?
So I think you have more members who are coming to DC who think this way. And I think that it's going to become more apparent. But there is this existential, I think, battle in Washington. It's really an existential battle for the country. Voters have to start understanding, if you want a government that provides a military, that provides benefits, that does all these various things, you need a government that's lean. You need a government that is fiscally responsible. That way, it can continue to do these things into the future. If voters don't take that seriously, why would politicians take that seriously? Yeah. And the second part is, I do believe in term limits. I think that we need to have a washout of members across the board. Time to go home. Yep. Time to go home. Yep. But this presidential election is crucial because we're now at a point where our fiscal problems are really going to start to impel our nation's operations. In 10 years, under Joe Biden's plan, interest on the debt will be the #1 line item of all things we spend money on. Bigger than Medicare, bigger than Social Security, bigger than our military. Interest on the debt.
The fact that anybody thinks that makes sense is just beyond me.
Well, I totally agree. But again, what Joe Biden did is he abused separation of powers. This student loan bailout is unconstitutional. He did not come to Congress. But the problem we have in Washington, and frankly in media and largely in politics, is he has become accustomed to going around Congress, and there are no repercussions from people out at large saying, this is wrong, you should not be doing that. And then the only time you can really remedy that is with budget appropriations and at elections.
Final question, do you think the Oversight Committee will get to the bottom of all of this scandal involving the Bidens and the bribery. Are we going to see something come out of it that will ultimately result in accountability? That's, I think, what American people would like to see.
Yeah, I definitely believe so.
Okay.
I think that we're going down that course. The big difference between us and the way Nancy Pelosi ran things is Nancy Pelosi picked her target. It was obviously Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And then he was guilty until proven innocent. What we're doing is we're going through the process of getting the actual evidence and presenting that to the American people and actually building our case. And then when the case is made, it'll either be members of Congress through our actions, or it'll be the American people in the next presidential election who will render that verdict. At the end of the day, we are a body of, by, and for the people. The people are going to have to choose which way they want our government to go. My hope is that they choose the right way.
I sure hope so, and I hope you're a big part of it because you are one of the most articulate and thoughtful people I think we've got in the Congress. I hope more people like you show up and get elected. It is an honor to have you here. Thank you for coming and joining us on the show, and I look forward to many other conversations with you on that very couch. Please come back.
Absolutely.
Congressman Byron Donalds. Now, for our audience, if you want to follow the Congressman on social media, we have all the links to him both officially and through his campaign at Huckabee.tv.